Tales of Veldrith, written and produced by Matty Taylor. Book 2, The Lens of Power. Prologue, The Vanished Caravan. The forest loomed heavy and still, its canopy thick with the dying light of the day. The caravan moved slowly along the narrow dirt path, its wheels creaking under the weight of goods bound for Jorvik. A merchant named Halrik rode at the front, his brow furrowed as he scanned the woods for any sign of movement. His caravan had made this journey many times before, but tonight felt wrong.
Keep your eyes open,
Halrik muttered to the driver beside him.
These woods have been restless lately.
The man nodded, gripping the reins tighter as the horses snorted nervously. Behind them, a small band of guards walked alongside the wagons, their weapons at the ready. The goods they carried, salt, dried fish and rare gemstones, were too valuable to risk, and yet Halrik couldn't shake the unease prickling at the back of his neck. The sun dipped below the horizon, plunging the forest into twilight. Shadows stretched long and deep, obscuring the path ahead. The chirping of crickets and the distant hoots of owls filled the air, but beneath the usual sounds of the wild, Halrik thought he heard something else, a faint rhythmic hum, like chanting carried on the wind.
Do you hear that?
He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The driver stiffened, listening.
It's probably just the wind,
he said, though his tone betrayed his doubt. Halrik frowned, motioning for the caravan to halt. The guards exchanged wary glances as the wagons creaked to a stop. The chanting grew louder now, unmistakable and unnatural. It came from the trees, reverberating through the thick underbrush like a heartbeat.
"Form up!"
barked one of the guards, drawing his sword.
"Stay close to the wagons."
The others complied, their weapons glinting in the dim light. Halrik climbed down from his seat, his hand resting on the hilt of his dagger as he scanned the tree line. The shadows seemed to move, writhing like living things. Without warning, a brilliant flash of light erupted from the woods, blinding the caravan. Horses screamed, rearing in panic as a wave of heat surged through the clearing. Halrik stumbled back, shielding his face as flames burst from the wagons, engulfing them in a fiery inferno. Figures emerged from the trees, cloaked in robes of gold and crimson. Their faces were obscured by ornate masks, shaped like the sun's rays, and their hands glowed with unnatural fire. They moved with eerie precision, cutting down the guards with brutal efficiency.
By the gods!
Halrik gasped, retreating toward the rear of the caravan.
We're under attack.
One of the cultists turned to him, raising a hand wreathed in flame. Halrik barely had time to cry out before the fire consumed him. As quickly as it began, the attack ended. The cultists stood in silence, their ritual complete. The wagons smouldered, reduced to ash and charred remains. The masked leader stepped forward, surveying the destruction. With a motion of his hand, the others began carving strange symbols into the ground, their chant rising once more.
"The auroral lens draws near,"
the leader intoned, his voice reverberating with power.
"The sun's judgment shall cleanse this world."
When the chanting ceased, the cultists vanished into the woods, leaving behind only the burned ruins of the caravan and the sigils etched into the earth. By morning, Eira Thorsdottir and her search party discovered the remains. The sight that greeted them was grim. Wagons reduced to blackened skeletons, bodies charred beyond recognition, and the strange symbols carved into the earth glowing faintly in the dawn light.
"What in hell's name happened here?"
one of the guards whispered, his voice trembling. Eira knelt by the nearest body, her sharp eyes scanning the scene.
"This wasn't a raid,"
she said grimly.
"This was a ritual."
One of her men called out.
"There's a survivor."
Eira rushed to his side, finding a young man slumped against a tree, his clothes singed and his face pale as death. He looked up at her with wide, haunted eyes and rasped,
The fire, it spoke. It's coming. The sun will burn us all.
He collapsed before he could say more. Eira stood, her jaw tightening as she took in the devastation. She recognized the symbols now, their meaning buried in half-remembered tales. Turning to one of her men, she barked,
"Get Vestinus. Tell him it's begun."
As the wind carried the faint smell of ash through the forest, Eira couldn't shake the feeling that Jorvik's troubles were far from over.